update some of the stuff to the fundraising level.
بسم الله الحمد لله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. So inshallah, as Brother Sham mentioned in the brief introduction, the purpose or the sort of outline for this will be to talk about analysis of the 2024 US elections, kind of recap, somewhat closer to the final results. We still don't have some vote tallies for House elections, but definitely much closer to a picture of the overall elections and what happened. And then also where do we go from here? What will be the implications of what happened for the US and the world going forward, and Muslims in particular. So there was significant, first of all, the overall big picture is that this was a landslide loss for the Democratic Party in almost every state and every area. They lost the presidency, obviously. They lost every single swing state. So, they were talking about these 7 or 8 swing states. They lost every single one of them. They failed to pick up any new seats in the Senate, and they lost 6 seats in the Senate as well. And in the House, they also lost seats, although that tally is still yet to be completely determined. There was some talk initially that there were like 20 million less voters, or where did the voters go? The Democrats were trying to self-analyze what happened to their electorate. But as we get closer to final vote tallies, you'll see that overall numbers from the 2020 election compared to this election, there may be 1 million or maybe about 500,000 less voters. Now, if you take that into account that there should be 4 million more voters, because they're just by population growth, then you'll see maybe there's like a gap of about 4 to 5 million voters and that could shrink also, because some of the vote tallies are still in like blue states. So, ultimately you will probably get to maybe 4 million, I think, voters that were less than 2020 proportionally. But you have to also understand that 2020 election was the most turnout ever in a US election. So it was a very unusual election. So whenever they try to compare between this year and that year, you have to take that into account. It was, post COVID, there was a lot of enthusiasm for that election, and it was very unusual. So I don't think you can explain this loss by lack of voters. Somehow our voters disappeared or anything like that. And we also had, on the Muslim side, we had many organizations saying that they lost because of Gaza. They lost because of Muslim voters. But in fact, they lost every single swing state, and they lost all these sort of elections. And when you look at the polls, when they asked voters what were the most important things to them, why did they vote, the number one was the economy. That was too much inflation, etc. Number two was concern about illegal immigration. And number three was about cultural or issues like transgender and things like this. So these were the 3 top concerns for the voters when they voted. And it really turned out to be the economy that be the biggest single factor. And you can see that, in problems that people have in buying new homes, for example. Home ownership and problems with buying a home has become very dramatic. They had the worst years ever in home sales this past year. And it's because, inflation and the rates on mortgages are so high and people have a hard time affording, and much less going downstream from home ownership in terms of all the inflation you see in regular things like eggs and groceries and cars, et cetera, et cetera. And so people, even though there was some rise in wages, it didn't offset this dramatic rise in affordability in just about everything. And so they said to Harris, we'll have less votes than Biden did 4 years ago. That's a dramatic difference. But in fact, if you analyze where she lost the most votes, it's actually not in swing states. It was all in states that were already decided, like, overwhelmingly blue states or overwhelmingly red states. So it was voters who knew their vote didn't make a difference. And in that case, they overwhelmingly rejected Harris much more than in the previous election for Biden. In fact, they lost anywhere from 500 to 700,000 voters, for example, in New York State, New York, which is a very blue state. And in that state, they said many people just put no selection on the presidential ticket. But again, that had no impact on the overall election. So, the lack of, people will talk about having less voters, but really it didn't have very significant impact on the overall election, because where she had lost voters, they were all not in swing states to a dramatic degree. I was looking at one thing which they said they had a Trump internal testing. They said the question which impacted them the most was when they said they used this slogan, Kamala is for they, them, and Trump is for you. So they were trying to play on the fact of the transgender support by the Democratic Party, and that was sort of when they do this in internal testing. They get these panels, and then they just sort of give them different slogans and see which one appealed to them the most. And famously, Lutz is the person who kind of pioneered this kind of social engineering psychology program and use it very effectively for the Republican Party. So that's one thing that they saw. They lost all the economic segments of the electorate except for the upper class. So meaning every other segment of the population, they voted Republican, except for white, higher educated, upper class citizens. And again, if you look at that, another way of parsing why they lost, well, you can see they lost the lower and the middle class. So, this is, again, and their biggest concern was the economy. Now, this is not just a US thing, because this is affecting the entire world. And Europe, whenever you have in a country economic problems, then suddenly, they start to blame or look for somebody to blame. And then you have the rise of what we call nativism, meaning, the native population will start to complain about the immigrants. And so you see this anti-immigrant sentiment, which has been rising, not just here, but all over Europe. They said more than half of European countries have two or more anti-immigration parties. Political parties, that's one of their focus, is just anti-immigration. And similar kind of sentiment has been rising here. Some of the Democrats realize some of the things that are happening, but some of them seem to be in a sort of state of denial. Donna Brazil was one of their former DNC chair. She said, this year the American people rejected normalcy, decency, morality, and they chose Trump. But in fact, it turns out that they were thinking the Democrats are immoral, indecent, and abnormal because of their support, among other things, of transgender issues. So Muslim parties themselves, of course, confused the whole issue. They said that we had a big impact, which we unfortunately didn't. They even didn't know the electorate very well. CARE did a poll about Muslims, just looking at who were Muslims going to vote for. Before the election, they said 42% for Jill Stein and 42% for Kamala. This is what they did a polling and thought how we were going to vote. After the election, they did an exit poll. 59% of Muslims voted for Stein, 22% for Trump, and only 14% for Kamala. So, in fact, they themselves didn't project or understand the electorate very well. And so, I think that's a sort of an overall picture of what happened with this election. And then Brother Shem maybe can add to that and he's talk about what happens after that.
Jazakallah khair. As we have seen, the Democrats have spent lots of time so far to trying to blame A and B and Z and D and this and this and this and that without really looking into the mirror and seeing that they messed up big time. At one point, they blame Biden. At another point, they said, oh, the Muslim vote. And at third point, and so on and so forth. But actually, whoever was advising them, that is the campaign, really missed the point. In the last month, they kept saying that Trump is weird. His vice president-elect is weird. Those people are crazy. I mean, they kept this day in, day out, day in, day out, thinking that this is what matters. Of course, as Hassan mentioned, Biden got 81 million votes. That's the largest ever, if I'm not mistaken. And for Trump, when he was elected in 2016, he did not get the popular vote, basically, at that time. And people said, oh, he does not have a mandate. The bulk of the Americans did not elect him. Well, now, more than 75 million have elected him. And, it's a few millions more than what Kamala, got in this regard. So counting on this aspect of, yes, there's no doubt that Trump is weird, his vice president is weird, they have some craziness in them, and all those, but this does not appeal, and it did not appeal to the people. A major mistake that she made when she was asked what difference would you make from what Biden was doing in terms of policies. And she looked and said, nothing come to mind. Wow. I mean, people are suffering economically. People are suffering, from the rate of inflation. I mean, the prices are crazy. All of you go to the market and buy stuff in this regard. Forget about Gaza for now. And forget about Ukraine for now. The money that being, dumped into Ukraine and the Zionists in Palestine. But what every average American feels, you get those people who are really disconnected. They do not really relate. And I think that this is really the main reason to try to blame Biden and to try to blame, the Muslims, as some Democrats have voted, that if the Muslims voted for us, we would have, absolute nonsense. That's clear. Now, we have seen, and we touched upon this the week before last week, before the election, we have seen, unfortunately, that the imams in this country took stands that went through three ways. And of course, when there are issues that are of importance to the Muslim community, matters that really matters, and the imams see that they can unify the Muslims behind them, they should take a stand. But when they realize that this matter is not, a matter that the Muslims will agree on, On the contrary, from my thinking, the first imam groups that came and said, let's not elect this or that, let's go, on another route, they were really not leading, they were following. Because many of the young brothers and sisters in this country saw what happened in Gaza, and out of this extra enthusiasm, they said, let's go for the third party. So I think the imams really followed, did not lead then, and they miscalculate big time. Then came another group of imams and said, no, traditional, because half of the Muslims in this country are African American. And in no way the African American will go for a third party. They are Democrats, by default. And this is to a large extent the reality. So some of them came up with those imams saying, no, we'll go with Harris. And then you get the Detroit fiasco, where some of those imams met with Trump, and he made the 5 promises, and he said, I agree with you 100%. I mean, come on. Give us a break. I mean, if those brothers who met with him, I did not see any sisters. Those brothers who met with him, being imams or leaders, I mean, if you ask him to say the shahada, say, we'll vote for you, say, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah, he will say it. I mean, everybody knows that Trump will say to everyone what everyone like to hear. And then he will turn his back and do whatever he wants. So this election needs to be studied thoroughly by Muslims, by imams, especially the leaders among them. When I say the leaders who really are on the national level, they are not really leading the Muslims. I mean, when you have one imam who have more than 700,000 followers, and the Green Party did not get even 0.5% of the vote. So definitely this hype that happened in many communities, among it is also our community, and I'm not criticizing anybody here. The young had a view that there is this disaster that happened in Gaza, this genocide. This should not go unpunished. Yes, we discussed and argued what it means to punish someone when the consequences can be this or this and that. And it turned out that even Harris, Kamala have the same thinking. When people stand in front of her and object to her, she said, oh, you want the alternative? So basically, that's her strategy with the Muslims. Oh, the Muslims are in my bucket. Why? Because the alternative is Trump, and they know what Trump did in 4 years. Well, it turned out to be total miscalculation and total failure. Because that was not really how the community reacted. That's not how the community saw it. Many have, in fact, one leader in one of the communities have told me, he said, some people approach me to try to vote for Kamala because of the alternative ugly. He said, I told them, if a donkey ran against Kamala, I will vote for the donkey. It's to that extent that people were fed up with this genocide. Another aspect that also, as I said, the young who really took a stand, and many activities we have seen, mashallah, around the country, they are trying their best. But I did make a comment a few times before that we have to understand 2 things: the reality in this country and the relationship with Israel. Because if we have a good understanding of how the system works, you will know that they have perfected this rotten system so that no third party will come. They have perfected. I mean, let's face it. The only choice or possibility that I would see for a third party, if some leaders within the Democratic Party get sick of the Democratic Party, some leaders of the Republican Party get sick of it, and they get together and form a third party, which again brings us to square one. That this is again the establishment. What's an example for this is Kadima. What's Kadima? So in Israel, there were two major parties at one point, the Labour and the Likud. The Labour now is almost dead. I mean, it's on life support. I think they have maybe 2, 3, or 4 members in the parliament. But Likud is still strong. So Sharon came being member of Likud, and he had a plan to get out of Gaza. He had a plan to do certain things when, of course, we are talking about when the Israelis have settlements in Gaza. So basically, Sharon realized that Likud are tying his hands. So he suddenly came and said, I am out of the Likud. I am forming a new party called Kadima. And suddenly, many left the Likud and joined him. Many left the Labour Party and joined him. And in the election, he got a good, comfortable majority. And he did what he wanted to do. So a third party is possible. But the Green Party, this is not Europe. And, you know, I think that the Muslim community, the Muslims in America, should really not come and say, as we say in Arabic, that you know, the Greens will get 5%, and after that they will get the money, and within, you know, 2 cycles we'll have an impact. That's not happening anytime soon, or even, you know, way down the road. So another strategy needs to be done by the Muslims, either at the local levels or through putting some candidates starting at, you know, local levels from the you know, like the education, for example. You know, there is a board of education in every locality. There are people who are in different positions within the state, within this and that, and you grow from there. You still would have some influence and some, you know, contact with the existing parties. But again, if the strategy, some people will still propose, you know, the Green Party, I am telling and saying it clearly, it's not going anywhere. Don't insist on something that is a failure, clearly a failure. They cannot appeal to the African Americans, Muslims and non-Muslims. Third party. US is not Europe. You know, they are not appealing to the Hispanics. Of course, they are not appealing to the white people. You know, there's this statement by Lindsey Graham. I'm reading this book by Bob Woodward, The War. There was a statement by Lindsey Graham to Trump. He said, look, you are guaranteed the people in America to vote for you who think the earth is flat and that we did not go to the moon. He said, all the people in America who think the earth is flat and we did not reach the moon, they will vote for you. This is what he told him in his face when he started running for the second term. So yeah, there are those people. Do you think in a million years those people will think of a third party? Those white Anglo-Saxon Americans? Of course not. So, you know, in conclusion about the reflection on the US election, it's a good study case. And even the way that we do poll of the electorate, it's way off. Hassan, Allah Jal Khair, quoted 2 things from the same organization, and it was way off from before and after the same organization. How could that be? And we cannot in any way say that, oh, you know, people have changed their minds in the last 2 weeks. That nobody claim this to be the case in this regard. So, yeah, it's a long struggle in this regard. I know we have voices that says, look at what the Indians have achieved and look at what this have achieved. Well, let me tell you about us. The organization that came to say we represent the Muslim is an organization that called Engage. Engage. Now, Engage is an organization that the Democratic Party established. And those basically Muslims from Florida who are friends with the Zionists. And they are not looking for the best interest of the Muslims in this country. They were looking for their own best interest because they were part of the Democratic Party. That's why when the first set of imams took this stand, Engage came and said, we support Kamala. And some of them, in fact, were having pictures with her, preparing to have position in the administration. So Engage USA, many of the Muslim activists in this country, brothers and sisters, will tell you in no way they represent us. They represent themselves and the Democratic Party that established them, and they have, as I said, good relationship with the Zionists. So to come and say this is the main Muslim organization is really something that we have to come to grips with, that they do not represent us. Yes, there are many local organizations, Islamic, that they're looking for the best interest of the Muslims. Those are the ones that people need to support with their votes, with their money, with their attending their functions, and so on and so forth. So shifting gears, what's after? I will, inshallah, testify based on what we have seen so far, is in 4 years, this country will not be the same. In 4 years, this country will not be the same. On the world stage, we might see some drastic differences. Or maybe not on the world stage. Depends on elements that I will discuss. So let's start with this country first, talk about the world stage, and then we'll talk about Gaza and Palestine in this regard. So far, we know one thing about Trump that everybody who knows him know about him. He's totally unpredictable. Totally unpredictable. You cannot come and say, okay, based on 1, 2, 3, this is how we're gonna behave. Based on this, this is how we're gonna do things. Based on this precedent, that's his next step. That you cannot do. That you cannot do. That's one. Second, he thinks that he is God's gift to humanity. That's his thinking about himself. That he is someone that some of his supporters say, you are behind Isa alayhi salam. He thinks he's better. Thirdly, is that he have a network of people that are really not your typical politicians. And this does not mean that, a compliment. I'll give you some examples. 2 of his candidates so far to major position in the government were accused of sexual crimes. And we have a saying in Arabic that says, إذا كان رب البيت للدف ضاربا فشيمة أهل البيت كلهم الرقص. If the head of the household is playing music and the drummer, what's the character of the family? It is to dance. So basically, it's no strange. And the first one is Gates, who became a candidate, or his election, he been nominated to be the Attorney General. So this Attorney General, it has been in the media in the past 6 years or 5 years. This is not new. He's a congressman. Last Wednesday, suddenly he resigned because a report was ready to come out. And when he resigned, the Republicans are saying, now we will not release the report. The report was supposed to be released last Friday. But when he resigned Wednesday, they're saying, oh, he already resigned. So they are still struggling with this question. Democrats want it to be released. If, of course, he's going to get seriously nominated, of course, that will be the case. This guy, very well-known anti-Semitic, very well-known anti-Semitic. He associates with people who deny the Holocaust. In fact, he invited one of them, gave him the ticket to attend the president's speech in the State of the Union address. He accused those Zionists now, the ADL are Zionists. At one point, they were really much better than the brand now. In the ADLs, he called them racist. In fact, Wikipedia yesterday or today, they issued that whatever come from ADL is not a trusted source, because now they are totally under the arm and the influence of Netanyahu in this regard. But the Jews in America were alarmed because this guy will be in charge of the what? Department of Justice. This is the guy who will look around, see that the laws are applied, that no group in this country is being unfairly treated and this and this and that. Why? Because Trump wants to get revenge at his enemies. And his enemies are not the Ayatollah or Bashar al-Assad or Hezbollah. His enemies is Biden and Biden's son and Kamala Harris and Jack Smith, who have been following him, legally on some issues. And basically, he made it clear that he's going to prosecute journalists. He's going to get some universities in check and take accreditation. So basically, we're going to have another Mohammed ibn Salman or Mohammed ibn Zayed or King al-Sisi or King Abdullah, that he's going to go after his own enemies, the ones that went after him. So this is just one person. And of course, the Republicans were shocked. Shock waves came in Washington, D.C. when this guy was nominated. The second one is Department of Defense. Another person who of course, Gatz from Florida, he was a lawyer, but he did not practice, or he never became involved in any position that give him experience to be at the helm of the Department of Justice. The other one is the Secretary of Defense, and again, Republicans saying he is not qualified. This guy also is accused of sexual assault. He had to pay a woman money to settle things and get her out of court. This is the Department of Defense nominee. He's a person who is proud of a tattoo that he had about the Crusades. So he considers himself a crusader. And you can see the trend when it comes to the Muslims in this regard. And in terms of intelligence, this is a very sensitive position. You want someone who's, on the way to like John Bonetta, some of those people, Gates, heavyweight when it comes to intelligence. So he's promoting this woman who was a Democrat, then turned Republican, and a member of a cult. So there were, issues when she was in Congress about her cult. She belonged to a cult. She has no experience, absolutely positively, to be in charge of the intelligence in this regard. In terms of the budget, he's bringing Elon Musk, who said he's going to cut $2 trillion from the budget. Wow. What is the US budget? How much? Any idea? What is the yearly US budget? We all live here. It's your money. It's about $8 trillion, right? About $8 trillion. So this guy Musk and Ramaswamy, whatever his name is, Ramaswamy, this who was candidate, they talk about cutting $2 trillion from the budget. Where this $2 trillion is going to come from? You know, if you took Medicare and the Defense Department is about $1 trillion. You know, where's this money gonna come from? Even if you, Trump have made it clear, I'm gonna shut down and eliminate the Department of Education. I mean, you can see where this is going. Now, when it comes to human and health services, who's being nominated? Kennedy. And Kennedy basically does not believe in science in this regard. He is anti-vaccines. I mean, you should be, as an average American, scared of what is coming in this country if he will have his agenda. Ambassador to Israel, he got Huckabee. Huckabee is a former priest. He still, I guess, practices Britism, if that's the right way of saying it. He is on video saying that there's no such thing as Palestinian. He said there are Arabs and there are Iranians. This Palestinian thing, he said, is just to take land from Israel and grab it away from Israel. And to the UN, he promoted another jerk, really a jerk. If you listen to her talking about Gaza and the Palestinians and all of this. So when these numbers and these people came with names, our brothers in Michigan waked up. They got upset. They got upset. They said, what? This is not what we were promised. We have, you know, to really do things differently. This is not what we were promised. Which is at least, you know, I know some did not really come to recognize that we were fooled. One insisted what? Harris and Biden done the worst, and he would not do even worse than this. Instead of saying, yeah, we were fooled in this regard. So the way that I see it based on this, that this country really would look much different in 4 years at different levels. He have talked about getting millions of people deported from this country. And someone will say, oh, he's talking about the illegal immigrants. Not just that. They are talking about if you are seen as a supporter of something that they do not like, they will tell you, you know, go home. So basically, threats are being distributed left and right on whoever they do not fit their own agenda in this regard. This is on the domestic level. And he has the Senate and the Congress on his side. Except one good sign, at least so far, is that his candidate to lead the Senate was rejected by the Republican senators, and they choose another person. Trump had a candidate from Florida, and they went to somebody from South Dakota. So at least a majority in the Senate have told him indirectly, you know, don't count on us just following you blindly. They rejected his candidate. On another level, still I'm talking about domestic, Democratic governors start talking about taking their own steps and taking things into their hand, telling Trump, if you want to do anything, you have to go through us. You cannot just send your federal agents and try collecting people in our streets. Now, those who voted for Trump, a good number of them, they will realize that they really did not bargain for this. He's promising, and he has been promising, lower inflation. His policies, economic policy, the experts are saying it will increase inflation. He's talking about large tax cuts for the rich. And again, this budget that we are talking about, about 20% or so of the budget goes just to pay the interest on the debt. And at one point in his first term, he was told that if you keep spending, the budget deficit will increase and the government will keep taking loans and this thing will go out of order and the interest will be really eating a big chunk of the budget down the road. He said, it's okay, I will not be here. It's okay, I will not be here. So that, this person who thinks of himself better than Jesus Christ, he will not be here present after 50 years to be blamed for this future disaster in this regard. Now, talking about the word, and I will finish with the word and Gaza, and we'll give it to Haji Hassan and see what he had to add. For the word, the Europeans are shaking. The Europeans are shaking. Remember, in his first term, he was contemplating the withdrawal from NATO. And this is a very serious move that will shake the world. I mean, imagine if the US, the leader of NATO, the most powerful military in the world, and the dominant force in the world, will start looking inside with this isolationist mentality and saying, why do we need to spend and support the Europeans? And withdrew from NATO. So that Russia will feel free to wander around, because next to the borders of Russia, thousands of miles are NATO countries, except, of course, in the Islamic republics on the east and Ukraine on the west. So if this thing would materialize in any way or shape, or even threats, it would shake economies, it would shake militaries, it will shake governments, it will shake stock markets, it will shake small countries that have dependent. I mean, let's face it, even in our own so-called Middle East, I said in so-called Middle East because that's a British term, that's not a Muslim term. Sharq al-Awsat is a British term. Do you think Qatar can defend itself? Do you think Bahrain can defend itself? Do you think Emirat can defend itself? Do you think Kuwait can defend itself? I mean, Iran will take all of these in a few hours. In a few hours. And Iran could take Saudi Arabia in a day or a day and a half. So to come and say that, we need to care about our own and this and that, this has implication that really will destabilize the world. He is on record 2 years before he ran an election of saying why we are giving Ukraine so much money. Why not give the money to those mothers that are breastfeeding, that we do not even have milk in this country. And, he made those statements. And that's appeal to some people. Yeah, why we are sending those billions to the Zionists in Palestine, why we are sending those billions, tens of billions so far to Ukraine. I think it exceeded 150 billion so far, just during the war. I think totality for the last 20 years or so, it got to around, if I'm not mistaken, $400 billion. That's, to the average American, that's outrageous. Why do we care? Of course, they do not understand the geopolitical issues and Russia and the Soviet Union and the history and this and this and that. But he had played this tune before and appealed to many people in this country on this basis, that the U.S. is wasting its money overseas when the people here are in need. And he said the people even are tapping into their mortgages to afford food and gas. That's what he said 2 years before this election. And he played that tune on and off. So the Europeans are alarmed. For a reason or another, the Arab governments are happy. I think there was a Kuwaiti politician before the election, about 3 weeks, saying basically Trump is a strong man and we'd prefer to have him in the presidency. And, the rest of from Sisi down the drain, all of them have welcomed the election of Trump even before he was elected. What is it that they're counting on? That he will take on Iran? Well, he just sent Elon Musk, 3 days ago to meet with the Iranian ambassador to the UN. Russian sources have brought the news. The New York Times have brought and confirmed the news. Of course, Iran denied the news today. Iran said, what meeting? We do not know about this meeting. So it looks like this meeting only privileged few in Iran were aware of it. But that's his style. Remember, this U.S. kept threatening North Korea, and suddenly Trump said, I'm going to go and meet with the leader of North Korea, cross the border from South Korea, and he said, now we are buddy-buddy. Yeah, you remember? I mean, this took place in this regard, and it was a shock to the establishment of this country and to, countries around the world and to the South Koreans themselves. So if our, so-called Arab leaders are counting on Trump to take care of Iran in their way, they are mistaken. This guy worshipped himself and then he worshipped the dollar. Two gods in his life, himself and the dollar. And Iran, a country that has the resources, and a country that we have seen clearly that there is channels working with the U.S. on those attacks between it and the Zionists, that was clear. And if you also see Bob Woodward's book, you could see it clearly that they have back channels through the Europeans where they talk to the most extreme elements in the Iranian government. So, it's foolish for them to think that, for them and Netanyahu to think that Trump will anyway will be an enemy of Iran in this regard. And let me just comment on this Palestine and Gaza issue, and then we'll go to Hajj Hassan. We have to realize that if you read the Israeli media these days, there's euphoria. Basically they are talking about getting the West Bank and Gaza to be part of Israel so that the settlements will be under civil rule, not the military rule. and the Palestinians themselves will be under civil rule, not military rule. They will leave to them there to take care of the collecting garbage and health and this and that. But there will be one country, one law, and of course they will not offer Palestinian citizenship because that will tip the balance within the country between Gaza and West Bank and the 1948 Arabs, meaning Muslims and Christian, majority of course are Muslims. There's about, easily, about 7.5 million Arabs. Total number of the Jews is about 8 million. At this point, about 1.2 million have Israeli citizenship. And they are basically about 20% of the population within the 1948. So when we say annexing, I mean, they use, you know, remember when Sarah Palin used the term drill, baby, drill? They are saying annex, baby, annex. So they're thinking this is ripe to annex in this regard. But there are a few voices within the Israeli media who are saying, you know, wait a moment, this is not necessarily what you're going to get. Because this guy is unpredictable. And he have already made some statements. In fact, in the Israeli press, they are saying that Netanyahu is considering having a ceasefire with the Hezbollah as a gift to Trump. Now, Trump have asked him, said, before January 20, when he become president, I want all the hostages out of Gaza. And, you know, some of those, again, unpredictable statements that come and this need to be done. It's similar to when he said that I'm going to finish or end the Ukraine war in 1 day. In 1 day. Of course, he never said how, but he said in 1 day I will end the war. So some of these signs, some of these signals, again, not all of them are coherent. Not of them, you know, make sense. But this is what the country will get. And let me close with this about Palestine. There were so many attempts from 1948 until today to liquidate the Palestinian issue. In 1948, they tried to liquidate the Palestinian issue. It survived. In 1967, they tried to liquidate the Palestinian issue. It survived and continue. In fact, they have a statement in the Israeli press about Rabin in the 70s saying the Palestinian issue cannot be solved militarily. I'm not sure why they are digging it back and bringing these statements. When I was growing up in the 70s, the Zionists have many plans to really throw the PLO and the supporters off balance and create entities within the Palestinian leadership, meaning in creating local leadership. And all of them failed. At one point, they wanted the mayors of main cities and the Mukhtar of the villages. Mukhtar is a person in the village who is the person that, you know, write the deaths and write the births and all of these things and go downtown like in here and register them. And he's the face of the village. So at one point they have collected some of those makhatir. Makhatir is a plural of Mukhtar, to be in charge. All failed. You know, Shamir and company have tried many of these things. Then came Sadat. And Sadat came basically with this idea, I am ready to do a grand deal, including Sinai and Palestine. And Begin said, no, deal with Sinai and forget about Palestine. Sadat was ready to liquidate the Palestinian issue, and Begin refused. Arafat came with Oslo, because Arafat went to Oslo and got nothing, because Arafat thought that Hamas was on the brink of taking over the West Bank during the first Intifada. So he rushed on a side track to work with the Zionists and signed on white paper. That's why the Palestinians are paying heavy price. They signed on white paper. Basically, all what the Israelis did, we recognize Arafat as representing the Palestinians. Arafat gave back that Israel have a right in Palestine, have the right to all the water underground, have the right to the borders, have the right to this, and have the right to this, and have the right to this. Basically, Palestinians have this image of an authority that by now everybody said it's an agent working for the Israelis. There were other attempts. The last one, major one, was the Trump attempt of the deal of the century, moving the Palestinian issue from a political to a money-wise, giving the Palestinians $50 billion, and let's just do without this, and just do something and call it a Palestinian state. All of it is fake. To the point that Abbas, imagine Abbas, this Abbas who's a sellout, he said to Trump, يخرب بيتك, in our terminology, may Allah destroy your home. That's, you said it to somebody. And he told him, Ibn al-Kalb, بعيد عنكم, يعني the son of a dog. He told Trump as a result. I mean, if Abbas felt that, this thing will never, you can see that they are really adamant that they do not want to give anything to the people of Palestine in this regard. And of course, with this normalization that was going to happen with the Saudis and followed by the Pakistanis and the Indonesians, October 7 came and drove the whole region into a different new reality, that we are still seeing a massacre after massacre, and the Israelis paying also heavy prices in Lebanon and in Gaza. So in short, not Trump or the next president or the president after that can finish this issue of Palestine. Palestine, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He put it in the Quran, the blessed land, al-Ard al-Mubarakah. It's more precious to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have those jerks and those people who think that with their influence, with their money, with their power, with their might, they can do whatever they can, that have proven for the last 75 years, although all the Arab governments, with very few exceptions, are sell out when it comes to the question of Palestine. All of them are on board. All of them are on board. Yeah, there will be elements within, Yemen, elements within Lebanon, we are talking about the establishment. All of them are sold out on this. And inshallah, one day we'll get a chance to talk about this book of war. And you will see that the Arab regimes, one by one, King Abdullah and al-Sisi, Mohammed bin Salman, Farhan, Mohammed bin Zayed, all of them the same sentence, just quoted by Bob Woodward. We told Netanyahu, don't trust Hamas. They were sleeping with Hamas, and they are paying the price for this. All of them said the same thing. We're going to give the Israelis the space to finish Hamas, and they have to finish Hamas. All of it is documented in meetings between Blinken and the so-called Arab leaders. Hajj Hassan.
So I'm just going to go over a few sort of details of what Brother Hisham said that might be of interest, like specific laws or changes that you can see. These are from Trump's own policy platform. Also, some of them are from statements that he's made. So on deportation or immigration, one big change they're trying to consider is invoking the Alien Enemies Act of 1978. So the problem with deportation large amounts of people is that you have to go to court, and the courts are full. You get a court date for deportation 2 years from now, and if you want to pick up thousands of more people, suddenly you can't deport them because there's no legal process. So what this act says, if they suspect you of being a member of a drug cartel or a gang, they can just expel you without a hearing. And this is what they keep talking about, all these drug dealers, all these cartels, but they're it's just a suspicion, So this is the terminology that they will use to try to get more deportations done in a faster way, or expulsion from that. So we always wonder how's the math, because Trump always says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and as Brother Hashem says, the math doesn't add up. But what he always says is that we'll have these great tariffs, and suddenly we'll have all this money coming in from these tariffs, and we can pay for everything on this. This is his math. This is what he's relying on. But some things that he's mentioned, 10 to 20% across the board tariff on all Chinese goods, or 60% tariff on all Chinese goods. You think about how many things are from China in your closet. It's every single thing. So if you do that, what's going to happen? Inflation. So as Brother Hashem says, he's talking about fighting against inflation. And of course, it never works, because when you institute a tariff, they institute one back, and ultimately you don't get the money that you think. People will just stop consuming certain things. You'll just end up losing money overall. So it really wouldn't really work. Healthcare. As Brother Hashem said, he introduced this guy as a nominee, Robert F. Kennedy. Among the things he wants to do is get rid of fluoride from your water. He thinks this is some kind of serious problem. Fluoride is in the water to try to prevent cavities, and so there's a big segment of the Republican, really crazies, I say, who don't believe in any healthcare. They think it's all kind of a conspiracy. So. For them, fluoride is part of that conspiracy. For them, they want to take all the money out of all research and put it into alternative medicine, whatever that means. There is an alternative part of the NIH which already exists, so I'm not sure what exactly they mean. And of course, he's anti-vaccines, because some of these people feel that every vaccine has very negative consequences, including autism. Things which have been disproven multiple times, but nonetheless, these people believe this wholeheartedly. So he's catering to that segment of his base, and who knows if this guy will actually get confirmed. This is one of the. But if he is, these are some of the things he's mentioned. Let's see. So one other big thing, and I'm just for the sake of time, just not going to go into everything, is that there is Stephen Miller, who was on the administration the last time. They basically left before they could do a big thing which they were talking about doing before, which was basically directing the US government to consider anybody who's born in this country that's not born to a US citizen or a green card holder to not get automatic citizenship. This is an interpretation of the 14th Amendment that basically what's called birthright citizenship. Everybody who's born here becomes a citizen automatically. And for one of their goals is to change that so that, and they talk about this very extensively, that only person who will automatically get citizenship is the child of a citizen or a green card holder. Everyone else will not get that right. The second thing he talks, and he says he's going to issue it as an executive order. So I know Brother Hisham said that he has control of the House and Senate. He didn't mention he also has control of the Supreme Court, which is a big factor in this issue, because what happens when you issue this executive order, suddenly it's going to be a lawsuit, right? And so where's that lawsuit going to go? It's going to go to the Supreme Court. And so that is something that very dramatic change in this country, one of the few countries in the world where you were born here, you were a citizen, and they're really trying to change that. And they're trying to change it not by law, but by this executive order and through the Supreme Court. So I think you'll see that pretty early on, that they're going to issue something like this. Now, the other thing he mentioned really was, and I don't know how much he can actually do this, but he says that these universities have large endowments And he says that we're going to sue them and take these endowments. You know, like Harvard has, you know, billions and billions of dollars of endowment. And he says if they don't do what we say, we'll just sue them and take their endowment. You know, I don't know if this is possible, but he also talked about, as Brother Shem said, that the accreditation process is a legal process that they can control and maybe use it as a lever over universities. They also want it so that any student who's coming from overseas in these universities to not be able to talk about, you know, anything against Israel or against the U.S. or anything, because they say that we're going to deport those people if they start talking like that. So they want to limit the rights of people to speak, and they also want to exert more control over the universities by trying to threaten them with taking their money or threatening them with accreditation. So there's some level of control. Of course, they talk about it predominantly in terms of race. You know, they don't want racism. You know, basically, they don't want anti-white policies for universities for as far as enrollment and things like that. But you know, you can see how it will spread to other things. And they even mentioned something about saying something against the U.S. or American values or something like that. So this broad sort of term will capture a lot of things that potentially they don't like. There's already this issue where they're going to, or if they've already done it, I don't know, but this anti-Semitism redefinition to include any criticism of the state of Israel is considered anti-Semitic. So if you think that, take that to this logical conclusion, it's also racist, right? So then if you have anti-Semitic criticism of Israel now, will suddenly be a criteria for you to lose your accreditation. So now you have to police your students even stronger. And these students can't speak if they're foreigners, and suddenly they'll be at risk of losing their student visa, and so on and so forth. So these are real things, I think, probably, you know, going to be implemented fairly rapidly or likely to happen. Now, some things that may be of interest to people, may be positives. He does talk about increasing homeschooling. So, yeah, okay, 2 minutes. So we'll finish on that. Homeschooling, you know, currently you have 529 plan where you can invest for your kids for education, and you can take that money for university. They want to take it so that homeschoolers can also take up to $10,000 a year to spend on homeschool things. So there are some things that may be of interest or positives, but overall I think the main thing is that they are trying to change this country in a way that although they talk about free speech, what they want is less free speech and more government control and more avenues to pressure things. And some things which we talk about dramatic changes. I mean, this is definitely what Trump does, dramatic changes, you know, things that nobody would think about doing. In fact, one thing I'll mention the last, he says something called impoundment. Impoundment was an actual ability for US presidents for many years until the Congress in 1974 canceled this ability. And it basically says, if Congress gives you money to you know, like let's say pay for veterans, the president can decide, I don't want to use the money for veterans. I can just, you gave me $100 million, I'm only going to spend $10 million. But right now what it says is that we gave you $100 million, you have to spend $100 million. And so there's, you know, you can see if he has this capacity or ability, suddenly he can do all sorts of games with these things and exert power in another way. So I'll end with that.
Jazakallah khair, Brother Hassan. Just let you know that some of those nominees might not need to be confirmed by the Senate. He already threatened that he will appoint them in a recess. So basically the president has the ability, when the Congress is off, that he will appoint those people to their position, and the Congress, you do not need the Senate to confirm them. So he already counted for this, and they are trying to reduce the federal workforce, of course, from about 3 million to whatever drastic numbers. Yeah, 75%. I'm not sure how that will be done. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bring the khair and the good and protect us, protect Islam and the Muslims in this country and around the world, inshallah, and give hidayah to the non-Muslims. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevate the suffering from the people of Palestine, from the people of Lebanon, from the people of Sudan and the rest of the Muslim world. Allahumma ameen. Jazakumullah khair. Wa barakallahu feekum. We'll see you next Sunday, inshallah.